Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday afternoon, When Our Home Becomes Workplace series. Today we have a wonderful presentation for you by Dr. Elana Farace. Am I saying that correctly? Tell me your last name.
You're saying it correctly. It's Farace.
Oh, Farace. Okay, good. I just kept saying to myself, I hope I'm saying that correctly. She did a wonderful talk for us about working from home with children, something that I needed to hear as I'm working from home, and so I'm looking forward to this presentation. Feel free to introduce yourself more. We're grateful that you're here with us today.
All right. Well, thank you again for asking me to talk. This is a talk I've kind of put together on the fly, feeling like nobody's really an expert during COVID on this, but it can. I have worked from home for a long time, so yeah, I'm a psychologist here in the medical center. My primary appointment is in the College of Medicine and Public Health Science, where I teach. I teach in the medical school and I teach in the graduate school, the public health programs. And then I'm also a clinician. I see patients 2 days a week in neurosurgery. So yeah. This is my official title, but my real CV is that I'm a professor mom. So I've been working from home. I've been working from home, I think, all the way through graduate school, and then, once I had a kid, etc. And I'm old enough that when I was in graduate school, it was a big deal. We had a computer at home, but if we needed to print or run any data analysis, I had to leave home and drive to the university and find somebody in a basement who printed out paper with green and white stripes and gave it to me. So I've developed some tips on this over the years, and I'm going to share it with you guys, and I hope it helps. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through some environmental factors about setting up a workspace, time management issues, interacting with others professionally, and with the others at home with you, which dovetails a little bit into my talk a couple of weeks ago, and then conclusions, and then I added a resource slide at the end that Dr. Holder asked me to. All right, so environmental factors. It's important to designate a workspace at home. This picture is of one of my friend's little boys who declared this was his home office. So really, you pick something that whatever works for you. A lot of people already, once we went on lockdown, people already had a workspace in their home. The operative word there was one workspace. So lots of times other adults and the kids end up having to find their own spaces. So people have used their home offices, a spare bedroom, closet. In my home, I've sort of chosen a side of the room because that works for me, and I'll share some pictures of that later. You want somewhere where you've got relative amounts of privacy, although one of my messages is you're still at home, so it's okay if your kids break in or you get interrupted or a cat walks by the computer screen, that kind of thing. Try to find some place with natural light, just because there's psychological data that says that can make you happier to be exposed to natural light. Try to have a nice background behind you. Try hard to separate being at work from being at home, and I'll talk about a few tips about that later too. And then at the end of your workday, try to leave your workspace. So even if you're just going to sit down on your laptop again and do, Amazon shopping or whatever, at least close out your work tabs so that there's a time when you're at work and there's a time when you're at home, even if physically there's not a difference. And down at the bottom of the slide here, I just include some of the websites that I looked at for help me organize the talk. But you may want to read them further for extra information. All right, so you're basically setting up your environment in today's work world. That basically means a computer, high-speed internet, some kind of video conferencing equipment. This was my Mother's Day present. I finally got AirPods, what they're called. So, my kids were like, look, Mom, now you're one of the cool kids. And I have to say, it does make video conferencing a little bit easier that I'm clearly not using them right this second. Having a chair that's got good ergonomics, that's comfy to sit in with back support, and you can sit in for up to 8 hours a day. Nice to have desk space and office supplies you need in view. And maybe you want to add a plant or some photos or whatever makes you feel most comfortable in your environment. So some example workspaces here. This is actually where I'm speaking to you from. You can see I have this little table, which I like because I actually decorated it myself. This is washi tape, because it was a nasty tabletop. And then my little light. I have my phone sitting next to me, partly because getting into all the Hershey Medical Center stuff. I keep having to do the Duo two-factor authentication, which I have set to face recognition. So if I have my phone sitting upright, phone's looking at me, then I can turn and do the face recognition so that whatever I need opens up, and my little laptop. You can see here's my yard and some natural light. This is another friend of mine. This is an example workspace at her home. So this was a home office. It stays a home office with her husband there. And their 3-year-old who declared that he needed his own home office too. So the two of them sit together and do their work together. That's worked out for them. But in reality, life is messy and we're working out of our homes. So with full disclosure, I'm going to show you a picture of what's sitting just 2 feet to my left here, which is huge piles of unfolded but clean laundry. So don't feel like you need to be perfect. Okay, so a lot of working from home these days includes Zoom. And so I've added in a couple of tips about working on Zoom. There's a setting in Zoom where when you enter a call, you're automatically muted. And that's really good for at least setting up sort of the illusion of privacy so that, as you're sitting down and you say, leave me alone, I'm on a Zoom call, not everybody hears it. You can, the directions are here, mute your microphone when joining a meeting. I also suggest that people stay muted unless they are speaking. So there's a bunch of easy ways to toggle the mute button on and off. And again, that can really help with sort of keeping things above board. I think it's good to display your name. So, and you guys can do this right now if you want to go to settings in video. So if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, that should pop up. And you can click on always display participant's name on their videos. So that way, when people are talking, particularly if if you have it set to where the window lights up for the person who's talking, then you actually know who said something. And it's not quite so clunky with everyone saying, this is Elena, every time that you want to talk. You can, you want to be wary of your background. So you can see up above me here, I have the camera pointed so all you can see is my ceiling and my ceiling fan. When I'm more worried about that, or I feel like I need more privacy, you can actually set up a virtual background and select your image from what you want to be showing. So for instance, if I want to be professional, this is my Penn State public health science background. I'm kind of a science fiction geek. So here I am in the Millennium Falcon, in the middle of a battle. Here I am in the Matrix. I'm the architect, right? Using everybody. Here I am with some elves and Lord of the Rings. So you can basically do whatever you wish. I was in a faculty meeting last week, and the chair of my department had the Iron Throne from the Game of Thrones that he was sitting on. So in case we all forgot who was, in authority. And then you can choose different views. Like right now I have a modified gallery view, so I can see 5 other people on the call, and then I can kind of scroll over to see who else is there and how many people are on. You can also kind of maximize your ability to look at people who have their video turned on. You can choose a selection that says hide non-video participants, which I sometimes do because that can be distracting. All right, so here's the classic Zoom meeting. This is what happens when you're audio only versus when you're on video. Then a couple of Zoom tips about vanity. I'm not typically a vain person, but I have to admit I Googled how do you look better on Zoom, because I would be doing these Zoom calls and people would be saying, "Are you okay? Are you sick? Is there something wrong?" So I researched it. There's a setting actually under video that says, quote, "touch up my appearance." What it does is kind of soften the camera a little bit so it doesn't show all the like wrinkles and jowls and that kind of thing. So that's handy. Face a window, so find your light. People usually look better in natural light. But more I want to talk about behavior. So pay attention. So as you're talking or somebody else is talking, don't be, this person, or who's looking around the room, or who's, clearly paying attention to their phone. Try not to, like, if you're one of those sort of seat wiggly people, other people find it very distracting. And sometimes it actually literally technologically pulls the attention to you so that the entire group is watching you kind of wiggle around, particularly if you're making some noise as you do it. Watch your face. So a lot of times people sort of forget that they're on camera. So I like to set my video up to look at myself, as painful as that is. Because, you'll find people in meetings like, and you want to try to look like you're participating in the meeting, just like if you were sitting in a room. You may feel bored, but you wouldn't sit there and roll your eyes and look around. Try good posture, sitting posture. I think that helps you sort of feel more participatory and helps you. You want to turn off video and audio before you stand up. Like say you have to take a break from a meeting. Sometimes people put that in the chat. I have to step away for a minute, turn off your video and audio before you stand up, particularly if you're doing the Zoom trick of looking dressed up on top and not so dressed up on the bottom. And again, you never know kind of what what's going to appear in your background as you take away the block. And they say try to wear solid colors. Sometimes if you're wearing really heavily patterned stuff, it kind of freaks out the video camera, and that can be distracting to everybody else. And try not to wear anything that makes noise, so like jingly earrings or necklace or bangles around your wrists, that kind of thing. I really appreciated finding this on the internet, what to do in a classroom Zoom meeting according to kids. Pretty much a good list of things maybe you should do the opposite of. Like if needed, please do not pick your nose. Turn off your camera, turn off the sound, walk away, and then come back. So time management. This is tricky. So in general, the advice is, when you're working from home, get up in the morning and get dressed. Now, and I will say it again, we're not working from home like normally. We're working from home in a crisis, right? So people aren't just going to drop by. You aren't suddenly going to be different places. And I'm not saying, dress up as if you're in the office. But sometimes at least changing out of what you slept in, I think can help reinforce yourself, feel like you're being productive. This is my signal. I have on, even if it's like, here's my work hoodie and here's my hoodie that I sleep in, helps. One of the things I've been doing since I have been seeing patients in clinic is I have a whole bunch of Penn State gear, and that's what I wear to clinic. I wear my scrubs, you know, a Penn State t-shirt. I have Crocs that are Penn State, because when I get back home again, I dump that all immediately into the washing machine and wash it on hot before I come back and shower, just to decontaminate any possible exposures and protect my family. But I remember when I'm got my Penn State gear on, I'm representing Penn State. Like, even if I'm, you know, have to run an errand in and out of work, etc., I'm representing Penn State, and just happen to be wearing everything that's very washable. And then when I'm home, I'll put on a Penn State t-shirt just to remind myself that I'm still working for Penn State, sitting here in my bedroom. And when I'm not, then I do change. So, you know, I usually change into workout clothes, which may or may not get worked out in, and then, you know, maybe pajamas later on. So at least dress up like weekend level work if you were going to be, you know, running in the office or something. And then at least, this is a little struggle in my home with my teenagers. Try basic hygiene. Keep up, take a shower, brush your teeth, comb your hair, etc. Not that anybody on this call has trouble with that, but I'm confessing my teenagers. Try to avoid this scenario when you wake up at 9:58 a.m. for your 10 a.m. Zoom meeting. And I understand there's some situational irony in me saying that, because when I gave my previous talk 2 weeks ago about working from home with kids, I was actually wearing my pajamas with something on. Today I'm wearing a shirt and like I'm appropriately dressed. All right, so when you start your workday, try to sit down in the morning and kind of think about your daily schedule. You know, I like to, even back when I was at work, I like to have a little notebook next to me. And I'll write on it, you know, here are the 3 things I absolutely have to get done today, you know, because there's a deadline or somebody's waiting on it and I don't want to be bugged about it anymore. And I'll put a star by them. And then sometimes as the day goes, I kind of think like, oh, you know, I do have this talk in a couple of weeks. I should maybe take a look at that or find this. And I'll jot down other kind of to-do notes. And then before I leave for the day, you know, I look at it and I make sure I've crossed off the 3 things I have to do for that day. A lot of times it can be helpful to start off your daily schedule by talking to the team of people that you're working with, even though you're working virtually. So for instance, when I go into clinic, first thing I do, you know, I turn on my computer and get a couple things set up, and then I go and find my team. And, you know, let them know I'm here, see who's there, see who's missing, kind of take the temperature, not literally, of everybody on the team, like who's having a bad day, who's having a good day, you know, any obstacles we got to work on, etc. And so people have been doing that now, even though they're working from home. They, you know, they may decide like, okay, at 9 a.m. we're going to all have a group call. And either on the phone or FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, you get on the call and be like, okay, now here's the schedule for the day. Everybody has this. I'm not unavailable between 1 and 2, and you know, but otherwise, if you have questions, it's best to text me or email me or whatever. So you're just checking in, and that often also helps you kind of get into the right kind of headspace for work. So then you're kind of, you know, working your way into your day and you'll be more productive. It is important to take breaks. It can be, you know, we don't have all the reinforcements of, you know, the natural stopping points, you know, appointment end times, new people showing up for meetings, you know, whatever. Sometimes when I'm on a groove, I work through, you know, other things I should be doing. Sometimes when I go, you know, and break for lunch, I sort of eat my lunch through the next thing I'm supposed to do on my exam. So, I've been trying to set times and alarms about when I ought to break and then when I ought to go back to work. It's almost like a school day kind of thing with the bells ringing, but I find it helps me stay more on track. I also get really angry, so angry when I'm hungry. So, but I found for some reason I'm not as hungry here as I am at work, maybe because there's not so much tempting food that sits around. So a couple of times I've worked through when I would usually stop for lunch, and then I have a crisis in the middle of the afternoon. I've actually been setting an alarm, like it's lunchtime, stop now and eat lunch. When you do take a break, try to do something else. Like it's odd because you're at home and you kind of feel like, oh, this is all the same thing. But try to get up, go outside. That's not sitting inside and working. Try to walk your dog. Do something with your hands, etc. I've been doing a little bit of like home reno kind of stuff. So sometimes when I take a break, I'll jump up and go put a coat of paint on something. And for some reason, working with my hands instead of my brain actually helps me focus. And I get back to my computer and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to work with my brain again. And particularly in this time, try not to get too sucked in by the news. The cases where I sat down to lunch and then was still there a couple hours later, usually because I started reading about coronavirus or sort of following those things. Just try hard to limit to how often you check in on things, like maybe once a night at the end of the day or that kind of thing, because it can just get really overwhelming. You end up kind of spinning around and around, finding out what's going on in the world today. This is a picture I took the other day where I was actually sitting in my kitchen working on my laptop, and this is my dog who came by to say, it's time to take me for a walk. He was annoyed. So it is, the corona disorientation is real. You see on social media, people are posting things about, what day is today? Is it Tuesday? Is it Friday? Is it the weekend? So do what you can to kind of try to set those things. And when it's a weekend, try to not be working. So set your work hours so that you're available to your coworkers. Ideally, work when your coworkers are working. So if kind of in general your group has a routine, like, okay, now from 7 to 3 p.m., 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., we're all working. That means that's when you ask each other for stuff or check in with each other or etc. And then at 3, I'll send a note to my team saying, all right, I'm checking out for the day. I don't get to do that at 3, it's more like 6 or 7. But I let them know, okay, I'm checking out for the day. And they tell me usually earlier when they're done, and I don't bug them anymore. And it's important to kind of definitively end your day. You're working, and then now you're not working any longer. Last night I worked a little bit too long, and I turned around, and this was the scene that I saw where they came in to tell me it was time to feed them. Okay, interacting with other people professionally. I've read lots of tips that say it's important to over-communicate. So some of us are already familiar with the idea that it's more difficult to have. You shouldn't have difficult conversations over email. You should have them in person. You should at least have them by voice or over the phone. And it's because people are missing out on each other's kind of nonverbal cues. Like if you are talking to somebody and they're getting physically uncomfortable or angry, it lets you kind of modulate what you say in normal human interaction terms. And that's harder when we're remote. That's why Zoom is better than phone, but in person, which we're greatly limited in doing now, is the best. You also kind of have to more intentionally reach out to people. So one of my colleagues who I do work closely with, he tends to have a plan where the next time he bumps into you, he will tell you something that you need to know. And we're not bumping into each other anymore on purpose. Because we're following the social distancing rules. So I've asked him to reach out more, and I check in on him more, like, hey, anything I need to know? which is, I think would probably be annoying if we were in person, but it's actually more appreciated because otherwise we wouldn't have that sort of natural consequences of checking in. So like I said, check in frequently with people in your network. It's easy to kind of be out of sight, out of mind. So if you're quiet and you're perfectly happy working alone, other people will kind of naturally assume you're not working, or they'll kind of forget about you, which can be bad overall for your career progress. So make sure that you're logging in, you're checking emails, you're responding to emails, responding to texts, logging onto Zoom meetings. And I hate to say this, turn on your camera. So this talk right now, we flip through here, I have 0 cameras on. So it does make hi, Dr. Holder. It does make it tricky as a speaker because you're kind of talking to a brick wall. It's lovely. And so it's nice to kind of have that feedback, and it also really does just visually help people feel like they're connected. It makes it closer to what we're all missing out on now, which is kind of the real in-person stuff. And like I said before, appropriate emails, don't communicate anything in email that you think may make people angry, or that communicates something hard. You have to find a better, more interactive way to do that. The picture I picked for this slide is mittens. I remember as a junior faculty member 15 years ago when I came here, I was kind of the queen of sending snarky emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. And my chairman threatened to put me in mittens to keep me from emailing if I didn't get that under control. So learned that lesson. So staying connected to colleagues, like I said, reach out, do it by phone, by email, by video calls, try to work on team unity. Sometimes we send each other text pictures during the day, like, even just little funny things like current situation and there's like a cat on my shoulder or something. Video conferencing helps fight isolation. When you're on the video call, don't forget to socialize. So, not necessarily in a talk like this where people don't know each other, but as you socialize, as we're so removed from each other, I kind of miss the whole, oh, hey, how's your senior? Did they pick which college they were going to go to? How's the baby doing? How's your parents? And those kinds of things form important work relationships that we have to do our part to keep up. Not my work group friends, but I have a different set of friends who have now set up lunch meetings where, we might get together in the cafeteria once every couple of weeks at the hospital when we were all there. Now we have Zoom lunch meetings together. So we kind of get on and eat lunch and chat with each other, and it's almost as good as meeting each other in the cafeteria. So interacting with others at home, this dovetails a lot on the talk I gave a couple weeks ago that I think will be available on working from home with kids, which is really the biggest challenge. But, excuse me, they say it's important to set boundaries. So, times when you don't want to be disturbed. Some people say they put a do not disturb sign on their door. Kind of reminds me of like being in the dorm in college when you were in your room and didn't want your roommate to disturb you and hang like a tie on the door. One of the ways that we do it here, because everybody is tied to their phones, is we actually have a family calendar, and everybody in the family, including the kids, puts on their do not disturb things on the calendar, like, their French Zoom or Zoom with a statistics class, and I'll put on, when I'm busy in Zoom meetings, and I'll usually mark, like if I need to be on camera or not, and if I'm presenting or not. So on camera and presenting, usually they know not to come storming in and check me out, but there's that at least helps slow them down as they come through the door. but you know what? Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff, right? So somebody runs in, somebody interrupts you, you know, kid asks a question, the cat walks by, etc. That's all completely normal in this kind of setting. And it's important, practice self-care and self-compassion. Like, you're not sitting here trying to pretend or trying to hide the fact that you're working from home. Everybody's working from home, what we're supposed to be doing. So don't be embarrassed to be like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm working from home and I have laundry, or I have clutter, or, you know, don't judge me by that. This picture here is of a clip that you can see all over social media. It's of somebody who is being interviewed by BBC, where the toddler comes in and throws the door open and then comes around and kind of mugs for the camera. Cute. And you can see the wife crawling around the floor trying to recapture the kid, and then the dog walks in. It's very amusing. This became a big deal before the COVID quarantine, but nowadays you look at it and like, no, that's totally normal. I mean, in fact, that's a welcome relief sometimes from boring meetings, as my daughter likes to say. Why do you have all these boring meetings? And it's important to make time for physical and creative outlets. So go outside. Someday it'll seem like May, I'm told. And then June, it may be even nicer. Go outside. Particularly maximize it when the sun is up. Go play with your kids, play with your dogs, take virtual classes, exercise classes, you know, to kind of get yourself moving. We've had a lot of fun in my family with Just Dance 2020, which I'm horrible at following the choreography for, and my teenagers always beat me and they love that. But, you know, I have to admit, at the end of 30 minutes of that, I'm toast. Creative outlets are also important as you're working from home. So pick a hobby, you know, do crafts, pottery, gardening, cooking, home remodeling, which is actually the thing, like I said, that I've kind of chosen. I've painted old bedrooms and blinged out the shower with things like stickum things. I changed my bathroom to be like a deep sea, under the sea kind of theme, and I actually painted this little light switch cover. Well, actually, I printed it out on laser printer, and then I like transferred it onto the cover with acetone, and then let it dry, and then went over it with paint and kind of embellished it. So there's my creative endeavor that I honestly would not be doing if I were working outside the home for many hours a day. So in conclusion, you know, it's a good time to kind of learn new things about your family members. I forget sometimes in the stress of back when we had normal daily life, like, my kids are funny. My husband is also funny. It's actually a joy to kind of go back and hang out with them. Much more of a joy than it was when I was working outside the home full time, and I don't really know how to explain that. So embrace the quality time, you know, particularly with my teenagers. You know, they're just on the cusp of getting in the car and driving away, and I'll never get to spend time with them again. It's kind of been nice to have this respite where we can, you know, talk about the big stuff or the little stuff, and I'm not competing with all of their activities and all their friends and all the normal stuff. You know, I'm hoping it'll make it be less sad when they graduate and go away to college in a couple of years. Remember, this is still primarily your home, right? So it's your home. It's okay that it looks like a home. It's okay that it acts like a home. It is your work second. I mean, it is great that we're all doing what we can from home, and, you know, isolating ourselves and keeping safe, but it is primarily our home. Like, you aren't failing at work if you get up and run some loads of laundry and don't get quite as much done in one day. We're not working from home, we're working from home in a crisis. This wasn't supposed to be how we were going to spend the rest of our career. So it's okay, we're all doing the best we can. As I come to the end of this talk, I'm sharing my picture of these are my 4 girls. My eldest just graduated from Penn State on Saturday, 5 days ago. This next oldest is heading to Penn State in fall, maybe online, maybe in person. And these two knuckleheads are currently sophomores. So they're heading into their junior year. And before anybody says, oh, what a beautiful family you have, this is the picture that the professional photographer took a split second after this one was taken. It was this. So just keeping it real. All right, and then there's resources that Dr. Holder's made available, the wellness and emotional support resources. Here's a good link to it. Office of Mental Health, contact information, and I think I was supposed to include this slide still. It's an evaluation of the whole work from home series. And that's it. I will take any questions if anybody wrote them in the chat or wants to just unmute and talk.